Well, it is so good to be back. I am so excited to be picking the podcast back up again. And so this episode is going to feel a little different than what we've done in the past. It's going to feel a little bit more of like a hodgepodge, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And there's a reason for it. And I'm going to explain a little bit about where we've been, why the sudden stop in episodes that happened, what was going on there for that. And then I'm going to share the word of the year. Even though it's February, it's still not too late to talk about the word of the year as we have in previous years in this ministry. It kind of helps direct and stuff like that, especially over the last couple years. And so we're gonna look at the word of the year and why it's chosen and what that means for us as we go throughout this year, and a little bit of excitement there. I'm really excited. We're going to be diving into something that I've been wanting to for the last couple of years. And so as we begin here, I just wanted to start with a little bit of where we've been, why the break, and everything like that. So as we kind of go through this, this part isn't really, I'm going to say, scripted, or there's no notes for this one. When we get to the word of the year part, toward the end, it's a little more kind of like organized. This is just kind of going to be a story, okay, if we're being real. And so if it feels a little bit out of control, well, that's because I'm sharing with you some stuff from the last couple months that I'm really excited about, some of the stuff that was really kind of crazy and such like that. So I'm really excited to be back, though, and to journey through this year and to see where God is going to take us and what we're going to learn through what we're going to study this year. So back on November 6th, 2024, we published our last new episode called A Prayerful Response. It was the day after the 2024 election, and it was just a call from 1 Timothy chapter 2, and it was just a focus on how we should respond to the election, how we should respond just in general to a lot of things. It was a lot about prayer and how we should handle ourselves and what God would have us do. So you can check that back out in our archives and stuff like that. But that was not supposed to be the end. And there were a couple other series lined up. As a matter of fact, our Christmas series was actually supposed to be the start of our study in the Gospel of John, which is where we're going to this year. So we'll have more on that in just a little bit. But it was supposed to be kind of like the start of that series. We were supposed to do a series called Sounding Joy. And we were going to kind of conclude our year. The word of the year last year was joy. And so we were kind of going to tie that up and kind of conclude that over the Christmas season, as well as kind of start with where we're going in 2025. And God kind of put all of that on hold. There was also a series in November called Counting Blessings that I was really excited about. And so a lot of those things just kind of got put on the back burner, I guess, if you will, and especially the Counting Blessings episode. I can't really return to the Sounding Joy series right now because we're getting ready to embark on the Gospel of John anyway. So we kind of just stopped there, right? And there was other plans. But as I've said, God always can course correct, or he can change up some stuff. But this came in more of an opportunity. Right. I'm currently studying for my master's degree at the time of this recording, and supposed to be finished up at the end of 2025. And so there was a lot going on in my life at that point. Plus, God opened up an opportunity for me to possibly become the pastor of a church here in my local area. And so with that being on my plate, and school being on my plate, and family being on my plate, it was decided that I felt it would be best, through much consideration and prayer and all of that, that I put the podcast on hold for the first time, other than other little moments where we were kind of getting started, things like that. But this was like the first time where I made an active decision that we were going to put the podcast on hold. And the reason for that is because I always want to present the best quality stuff. Over my years in teaching, in my local church for the kids ministry and things like that, I've always wanted to bring forth the best that I could. And if something didn't sound right, if something didn't feel right, if something wasn't there, I usually took it out or changed it or bounced it off a couple other people, and things like that, so I could present the best thing that I could do. And I've carried that over into this podcast. And what the struggle is being in school and doing a podcast. Well, that kind of works, right? But being in school, doing a podcast, preparing sermons, and all of that just was going to be too much for me. And because this was an opportunity that God had presented, I put the podcast on the side for a little bit because, like I said, doing school and preparing content for the podcast here and preparing content for what I was doing with that church would have really bogged me down, and something would have suffered, right? Family would have been kind of put aside. We've been really busy, right? So anyway, throughout November, my opportunity came, and I was able to preach for them, and I was in talks with them, a lot of conversations about possibly becoming their pastor, and what I thought originally was going to be just a brief hiatus, right? I had a couple weeks on the calendar that I was going to preach for them. School was going to kind of wrap up, and so I figured once November was done, we'd be kind of right back on track. So what originally was going to be like 2 or 3 weeks wound up being a couple months. And there's more to the story on that. So let's kind of just keep going here. And so I preached those couple times, and I thought that it went well, and we had some conversations about it, and we kept having conversations. And then they were like, okay, well, how about you try December? So I was on every other week in December and trying to, preaching for them and seeing where God was going to take me with that opportunity. So what I thought was going to kind of be done in November, I kind of figured either they would like it or not or whatever, but they kind of were trying to figure it out, right? And so it kind of spilled over into December, which, once again, I was in school still, and so if one was going to be dropped, then I could pick back up the other one, right? And so it kind of all just boiled down to having to continue there and focus on what God was going to do with me through that church. And mid-December came around, and they wound up not choosing me, and they wound up not being a fit and all of that, which as time went on, you kind of get the idea that maybe your style or your approach just wasn't going to work. And so I went in there about mid-December, and I was like, we gotta get this nailed down. Either I'm coming in or we're not. So one, I did that not because, I gotta know, it's all about me. It was more so I could know, so that way I could start planning other things and start kind of focusing back on other stuff, and so that they knew, so they could choose to go forward with their pastor search and not be worrying about me and, keeping me there and such like that. So, mid-December came around, and they decided not to go with me. And, it was upsetting, but it was also kind of cool to have that opportunity and to be a part of that period of time in them, in their church with them. And I shared a couple different messages with them. And so it was really exciting. But one of the things that I shared with them was about how God was going to do something new, and that God was going to kind of work through them. One of my favorite passages of Scripture. And sometimes I don't choose favorites. Like, it's hard to choose favorite things. I don't know if you struggle with that, but volunteering with kids like I do and students, like it kind of, hey, what's your favorite pizza, or what's your favorite movie, what's your favorite book, like what's your favorite sports team, like all of these different things. It's hard for me to choose those things. But when it comes to Isaiah 43, that chapter of the Bible is really kind of, especially verses 14 through 20 or so, has really been a part of my life, and God keeps kind of bringing it back around and showing me some new things. So that might be an episode coming up as like a break or something from what we're going to be doing, just to kind of dive into that a little bit more. It was a word of the year a couple years back in 2018, 2019. So anyway, so I was like, okay, now that the church is off the table, I'm going to restart the podcast, right? So I kind of got looking at that and developing the calendar and seeing where we were going to go. And then some big things happened at work. And it came down to, like, I didn't know if I was going to have a job. I didn't know if I was going to be able to have the same time slots to be able to, take my breaks and my lunch to be able to record and do the different preparations that I did throughout my day. Nothing during work, like it was like I'm not taking work time, but like just different things like that, and being able to prep and prepare. I didn't know what my work schedule was going to look like. I didn't even know if I was going to have a job. I didn't know if I was going to have to start looking for a job. I didn't know a lot of that. And with all of that going on at work, I once again made the decision to postpone the restart of the podcast until I knew a little bit more about what was going on at work, just because, once again, I was heavily focused on that, and for a good reason. And so that's why it once again got pushed again, just because I didn't know how I was going to be able to prepare, how I would be able to record, because throughout my work day, I prepared different things and I do different things, and then over lunch or whatever, I record the episodes or part of them or whatever kind of deal. And without that being on the table, I just didn't know what was gonna really happen. So that's a little bit about where we've been, why the long break happened, and I believe that God had something for me in all of that. And like I said, it was hard for me. And I know, like, it can sound like we're making excuses and all these different things, but in reality, I just want to do whatever it is the best. I didn't want to start up the podcast, and because I was originally going to start it on January 4th, and just kind of kick off and go. But then I was like, okay, well, what if some of these different things happen and I have to stop? We're going to be journeying through the Gospel of John and stopping and starting and 3-week gaps here or this, that, and I wanted to wait until I could dedicate the appropriate time again. And so, I think we're on that journey now, and God can show up some other stuff. I don't know what's going to happen. I could be starting it now and something could happen, and we'll be back to where I was trying to get away from before. So I just want to take some time and share that with you, because I believe it's important. And where we're going is really, really exciting. And so with that being said, around here every year, it's an annual thing. It's been an annual thing in my life since 2017 was the year I picked my first word of the year. And how it came about is people were talking about this thing, choose a word for the year, choose a word, and I was like, what does that mean? Like a word for the year? They were like, well, pray about it, talk to God about it, and he'll give you a word of the year and stuff like that. It's like, okay, and it threw out some kind of thing. It was like, oh, I kind of get the idea, right? But it was only recently, as of 2020, that I started incorporating the word of the year into the structure of the year, or the planning and the scheduling for the podcast, really more 2022, I want to say 2020, one of those 2021, probably the year we did Uncomplicated, because I structured our things around uncomplicated, right? And how to kind of like uncomplicate and then the next year was understanding, right? Having to have an understanding, and we did having understanding of different things. So it was kind of like a loose thread that we did, and then 2023 we did Journey, which was the Journey to the Promised Land series, and we spent the whole year surrounding that. Last year it wasn't quite like that, but we did Joy, and so we studied Philippians and just different things like that. And so last year I more structured our year off of the theme verse that we had. And so every year there's also a theme verse involved that we kind of talk about during this very episode. And so the word of the year, so if you haven't chosen a word of the year yet, don't think, it's already in February, like it's kind of pointless to do a word of the year. No, it's never pointless to do this kind of thing. See what God gives you. And a lot of the times, if you like I've talked about around here, if you put on that word as like a pair of glasses or like a lens to view things through, right? 2020, my word of the year was love. How could I be more loving? How could I be more kind? The verse that I chose was, above all else, love each other above all, or something like that. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was it's just encouragement to love. And how could I, with those glasses on, look how to love more people or love people better? And when you think about it, 2020 was a great year to figure out that, wasn't it? And so this year, so it's never too late to choose a word of the year. And so our word of the year this year for the podcast, and what we're structuring it after, and what I hope for my life, because these are the words that I choose for my personal life that I share with you guys, and I make like a podcast about it and stuff like that. But it's really ones that I've chosen for my personal help. And so this year I chose believe, and believe is because I really want to lean into the Gospel of John, and I just want to believe for just better things for me, for my wife, my kids, my friends, and my family. What I say and do on here, just believe that there's better things, and that there's good things to come. No matter how this year has started, now that we're a month into it, no matter what's going on, no matter how last year ended, no matter what the month of January did, to believe that there's better things coming. And knowing that throughout the month of January, when I was kind of struggling to know if I was even going to have a job, watching some of my coworkers, some of my friends at work get let go because of the transition that happened, and such like that, and just kind of where, transitions, they kind of happen, and things kind of go way down, and it looks kind of scary, like, are we ever going to kind of get out of that? And if you kind of can get through that, believe through that kind of stuff. And so believe is our word of the year. And so next week we are starting a series called Shining Light. And that's the other kind of theme I've given for our study in the Gospel of John. Because I believe that the Gospel of John shines light on who Jesus is, what he does, what his example is, and how we should do things. It shines light, right? For this very purpose. And so our theme verses for the year are out of John 20, and they're verses 30 and 31. And it says, the disciples saw Jesus do many other miraculous signs in addition to the ones recorded in this book. But these are written so that you may continue to believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that by believing in him, you will have life by the power of his name. In John 21, he talks about how the whole world couldn't contain the books if everything was written down that Jesus did. And so Jesus did more things than what we see, than what we're going to read about, what we're going to study about. But I believe that the Gospel of John will be really, really helpful for us. And it's, like I said, it's something that I've been wanting to dive into for quite some time. And God just kind of presented it here. And so what it looks like is we're going to study the Gospel of John. And there is a thing about kind of how we've done things on this podcast in the past. And this would be kind of like this verse by verse, paragraph by paragraph, section by section, whatever, through this gospel is going to be something new that we haven't really done in a while. We've done back in Understanding, I believe back in that year, we did a series called The Last Night with Jesus. And we studied John 13 through 17, and we went verse by verse, section by section, and we did that kind of thing. Last year we did Philippians, where we did verse by verse, section by section. And so we've done it before. And in 2023, when we did the Journey Through the Promised Land kind of idea, we kind of did that, but it was more of a kind of like we kind of dove in a little bit, and then we kind of pulled out and looked at kind of like an overview of some things. And so we're really going to dive in to this gospel. So what does this mean for people that are very like schedule and very like, are we going to be done this year and such like that? No, probably not. We're going to be in the Gospel of John until we're done. And as I said, God can kind of course correct us and change us up a little bit and, lead me in another direction for a second or whatever. And he's fully done that before. And so we may take breaks. I know in the summer we are going to take a break to kind of do some other thoughts that God has given me. And we're going to do our At the Movies series as we normally do. So I'm really excited to kind of dive into this series, Shining Light. And it's going to be really, really fun, I think, to see what John has to say. Typically when people ask me, hey, where do you want to start? Well, we're trying to find out about Jesus. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John are the best ways to find out about Jesus. But typically, I've always been pointed, and I've heard other people say, start with the Gospel of John. And the reason that is the purpose of the Gospel of John is so that we may continue to believe, not just start to believe or resume believe, that we may continue to believe who Jesus is, and that we may have life by the power of his name. John 10:10 tells us that he's come to give us life. So this whole thing, right? And John writes his gospel differently than anybody else, and I believe that he shines light on the things that we need to see, that they needed to see, in order to believe that he was the Messiah, the Son of God. And so we're diving in. Okay, so for the next couple of months up to Easter, we're just going to start at the beginning. And then when we get to Easter, we're not going to leave the Gospel of John to go visit Easter at some other point. We're going to actually do the Easter. So during Holy Week, Easter, we're going to do John 18 and 19. And then we're going to do John 20. And then we're going to kind of go from John 20. We're kind of going to finish up the back end. That's why we're there. And so it's going to look kind of weird, like we're kind of going to start, and then we're going to kind of end, and then we're kind of going to go back to the beginning of Jesus' life. But I think it fits because we're there, so while we're just there, let's just kind of continue that. And then we'll break off for the summer, and we'll kind of pick back up wherever we were, and we'll continue to go through this wonderful gospel. And so I'm excited to be back. I'm excited to dive into this series, Shining Light. Starts next week, Super Bowl Sunday next week. And so I'm really I think we're really gonna enjoy this. We're gonna see where John shines some light in different things and what that means for us and what that meant for them and all of that. And so I'm really excited. And so with that being said, it's good to be back, and I really hope you'll continue on with us as we go through this gospel. This is your first time picking us up. I hope you'll continue to stay with us and kind of journey with us through this gospel. So I'll see you next week with the start of Shining Light. I hope you'll be back. I hope that we'll have fun together in this gospel. I hope that it'll bless us and encourage us in many, many ways, and maybe shine some light on some things that we might have thought we knew, or that we knew, but maybe see it in a new and exciting way. So once again, see you next week, the start of Shining Light, the start of the Gospel of John, and I'm really, really excited. See you then.